Let's check in with Pastry Time, who's standing by stage side.
Thank you very much. I'm here with AD carry Sneaky. You guys, interesting set there versus Envy, kind of a comeback there in game 1 and a pretty solid game 2. Were you guys worried about Envy kind of coming into today's match?
I think as long as we played well like we did, it would be an okay match. They have been kind of on a downward slide since the very beginning, since they went like, I don't remember their exact record, but they didn't have a lot of losses, probably 0-5 for losses there. But yeah, I think it was an okay match overall. Didn't get too spooked.
And what about you guys, of course, because it's kind of a new team. Smoothie's in now, more of the starter. Meteor's sort of coming back into the roster. How are you guys feeling now most of the way through the season?
Well, it was definitely a weird transition to just stick with one support, because we'd been doing the double support since Korea. It was like 2 weeks in, we brought Smoothie over. So it's definitely a different dynamic. I don't know if it's necessarily better. Maybe it is for playoffs. I think it's more of a coach decision to do that. And I think it's okay. Maybe Bunny could do better than Smoothie. I don't know. Who knows? I think they're both really even.
And then on playoffs, of course, you guys are looking like a lock at least for probably somewhere in the top 4. You have a tough match against Liquid in the last week, but how are you guys feeling? Assuming you make playoffs, which it looks like you pretty much will at this point, how are you guys thinking about your playoff form? Because spring didn't go so well for you guys. How are you feeling about playoffs for summer?
I've never really had too many issues with playoffs, although last year was pretty sad going into summer. Didn't even get playoffs. And then spring, obviously, we lost to TSM first round. So overall, I've done pretty well with the team. I guess we in EnVyUs have done pretty well. But it should be an interesting run this time. I think we're improving a lot right now. And as long as maybe we don't face TSM first round, which isn't possible, then we should be okay.
All right, well, best of luck in the playoffs. Thank you so much for talking to me, Sneaky, but we are going to pop it back to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Pastry Time. It is very interesting to kind of look back or even consider the, the storied careers of some of these players, yourself included, Dyrus, when you think about the iterations of rosters that Sneaky's played with and the different, successes and failures that they've had. Now, I've won multiple North American splits. I've been to Worlds multiple times to different levels of success with many different people, and here he still is. A very long career and a great performance there to snag the win in 2-0 fashion over Envy in our series today. But I want to dive into Champ Select because somebody's got to explain to me what the heck Envy was thinking here in this Champion Select.
I don't think Dyrus or I will be the ones to do that because we don't get it either. They have an extremely magic damage heavy comp with a lot of protection options for an Ezreal who's like MO as I kind of deal with myself just fine.
Right.
And then it's not even a lot of physical damage. You would think a Lucian would have made more sense there, or like any hyper scaling.
Cog. Anyone over an Ezreal with a Lulu.
So even with a different pick besides Ezreal, one of the key things is having triple magic damage.
Right.
The fact that Gnar can rush Spectrals, Gragas can rush Spectrals, Zillion can go HP and like Abyssal. Anything MR is already super efficient and makes it really, really hard for the MR side, especially if it's champions like Lulu and Elise who are kind of weaker on magic damage compared to the mid.
Right.
Where Malzahar has a lot of magic damage, but even then, like, it's really unreliable.
So on top of all that, Lulu recently had the change, which makes her even less of an effective offensive carry because she doesn't have the pass-through damage on her Qs. So even now, she already got a nerf to her own offensive ability. Plus, you've put her in a comp that's so AP heavy, MR is that much more effective.
And on top of that, like with the Lulu change, wouldn't that make a different hyper carry make more sense?
Exactly.
Right, and I think you start looking at the order of how these champions were picked. Like you got the Ezreal a little bit earlier, so the last pick Lulu doesn't make sense the most, I think, because it was a Gnar that you see. Aurelia's up. We've seen Aurelia's kind of destroy Gnars over and over, and then Seraph doesn't take it. He goes for the Lulu, gets first blooded, and then from there, like the matchups seem mostly completely controlled by Impact. So.
And just like how Mark said earlier, where it feels like Envy's losses are coming a lot more from drafts and the actual players. Like, I don't know, it could be a lot different if they had like maybe one more AD source of damage, but in the end, it still comes down to execution. But making the job as easy as possible for draft is really important.
Yeah, they weren't doing themselves any favors in draft, and that is why we hammer it so much on the desk, is because this is the portion of the game. Champions League is the portion of the game where you have to set yourself up for everything beyond that. And you have shot yourself in the foot by creating a composition like this. You're going to have to execute so perfectly or rely on the enemy team to make a number of mistakes in order for you to come out with a victory.
Right. I mean, sometimes you can say it's like a high execution comp, like a lot of poke comps are. This is one where you're not even exactly sure what it does. Like, Elise Malzahar wants to pick, Lulu, Tom want to protect, Ezreal wants to kite. You're like, what exactly is your game plan in the team fight? Like, if they walk into you at Baron, like, right? Like, how exactly does this comp function? It's not immediately clear in any way. Like, sure, you can flash suppress someone, but like, what do you do from there?
Right,
Like,
and that's why I think for the most part, the earlier portions of the game, we saw very little action and interaction between these two teams. Aside from that initial gank to the top lane, there was very little skirmishing action happening between the two teams. Cloud9 was able to pick up 3 Ocean Drakes to the 1 Cloud Drake of Envy. So very much dancing around each other, not looking to fight too much until we hit that 30-minute mark when we have the C9 4th row around the Baron. They'll pick that up, and that's a huge influx of gold for them. But we will kind of witness Envy's inability to fight.
Right, I mean, it starts out with a nice arrow into a double bomb, knocks the Tahm Kench back with the Ezreal inside of him, so the Ezreal gets closer as well. See Gnar coming from the backside. Ezreal's able to get over the wall, but from here, Lulu's not doing much.
And she's not even with her ADC, so you're not even getting that benefit.
Right, like you think like what would Aurelia do? Like maybe go on one of the lower C9 members or something. None of that's possible here. It just kind of really falls apart for Envy as soon as it starts just with a basic engage.
So yeah, it's a very disjointed fight, and again, it's still unclear even within this fight itself how exactly Envy would have wanted to fight. What's their ideal fight?
I mean, it feels like they already lost the game at this point. Like they'd have to play it extremely perfectly. It feels like their comp is like more about them winning early and mid game, using their very strong level 6s to like just snowball really hard. But once it gets to late game, I feel like C9's comp has such a huge advantage. In this case, they did position a little bit off, but even if they went even this fight, like C9's just scaling up.
Right. And very instrumental in that entire process was Meteos, 2-0 and 6 on the Gragas. That initial gank to the top lane, which kind of sets up that, that isolated matchup. And then just being right place, right time, if anything, to prevent, as I drop my pen again, I've been doing that a lot recently. If anything, to prevent skirmishes, allow his team to scale, knowing that based on the compositions, as long as we stack up that magic resist, we'll be fine in the later portions of the game.
Right, he was able to basically control the entire game based off that kill. C9's bot lane had pressure anyways, and then they just moved around the map collecting turrets, dragons, buffs, everything was pretty much open for them. Because
he kept the early game under control, their win condition was secured.
Very much so. So Envy still struggling here on the back half of the split, losing into, rather 2C9 in 2 games. C9, though, this race for third between Liquid, while Liquid is about to move into a third game against CLG, I just kind of want to get your guys' opinion on this C9 roster. We're closing in on the end of the split. Based on what you've seen out of these two teams in the first sets today, how are you starting to feel about that C9 TL 3-4 matchup?
It's interesting. I think Jensen's been struggling mid, and Phoenix has been doing extremely well. I think Impact's champ pool is a little potentially exploitable, especially in the Gnar Aurelia matchup, which we've seen. And I think that's something that Lorlo loves to play, is that matchup. So I think C9 would need to game plan pretty hard for Team Liquid to avoid a couple of these obvious pitfalls. But because they're so obvious, I think C9's aware of them,
I think that both teams still have a growing potential where C9 is still getting better as a team, like Sneaky said, where he believes in both of his supports. But at the same time, Team Liquid, it feels like they're doing really well, but they're just making really dumb, small mistakes where they're better than that, which is like already really good for them. Even with them making those mistakes, they're already still really good. So if they get rid of those mistakes, I mean, TL is obviously favored, but it could go either way because playoff experience, and everyone plays different on playoff stage.
Oh yeah.
And both teams still have plenty of room to grow. We're going to head into a break, but when we return, Apex is going to go head-to-head with Immortals. That action hits your screen in just 3.5, so don't go anywhere.
All right, guys. You know what we must do. We need to win the game.
Sounds good. Green and take green.
Feels good, man.
You gotta slow at the perfect time, and saves the Whimsy for after. Oh my word, so much for Jensen. They do get him down, the ults were up, and one's not used.
Kill push, no push. Nice. Okay, good. Good job. Nice.
Lulu's done here.
I'm going over. I'm going over.
Yeah. Lulu's dead. Portal. Shit.
No, wait a minute.
They're dead.
Invalid die.
Nice. End the game. Cloud9 in 2 games take down EnVy.